Kevin, let's follow up with you and talk a bit about your ticket.
Yeah.
Last week, the party headquarters in Columbus was picketed by a wild bunch of sign-waving fanatics.
No, it wasn't.
Who hurled insults at the leadership. Interesting, they weren't Democrats.
No,
or liberals. They were conservative members of the party upset with some of the maneuvering on the ticket. And they felt that David Yost, the Hamilton County
Delaware County
prosecutor, who switched from the AG seat to the state auditor seat, was something that was, done at great duress under you. Set the record straight. Tell us what happened and why he jumped seats.
Yeah, I called Dave Yost. As we all know, Mary Taylor, who's our sitting auditor, was added to the Kasich ticket as a lieutenant governor candidate a week or two ago. I think it creates arguably the strongest, most formidable top of the ticket that we've seen in a very long time. That created an opening for us at the state auditor seat. And a few days later, I contacted Dave Yost, who up until then had been running for Attorney General
against former U.S. Senator Mike DeWine.
And I simply asked Dave to consider moving. Dave is a former county auditor. He's a sitting county prosecutor. He's traveled the state in terms of building a political grassroots campaign. He's certainly the most qualified person running for the position of auditor today. I asked Dave to consider it, and he said yes. So for all of the detractors, and would you describe it, a bunch
sign waving.
Yeah, there were about 25 people there who now are signed up and are helping us do some grassroots stuff, which is great. But for all of those folks who thought there was some arm twisting and backroom deal, nothing of the sort. Just a nice conversation with Dave. Asked him to consider it. He said yes, and we now have by far the most qualified person running for state auditor on the ticket this year.
All right, thank you. Chris, we had a switch with the Secretary of State's office recently. Jennifer Garrison dropped out. We now have Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy running from Columbus, and a lot of the progressive/liberal, whatever you want to call them, wing of the party, thought it was unusual that Jennifer Garrison even made it that far as a somewhat supported candidate by the Democrats because of her conservative social values, and now she's out. Would you kind of explain what happened here and
sure,
and answer those critics who thought the party shouldn't have embraced her to begin with?
Well, I don't know who at the party embraced Jennifer Garrison.
Well, she was out. She was at the knockout events. She was brought out as part of the party ticket. I was at the event. Around the state. So
seems to be one of the urban legends that the state party recruited Jennifer Garrison or recruited others back in July, to including Marilyn Brown, who was presently Franklin County Commissioner and was a one-time Secretary of State candidate who attended the knockout in Franklin County and participated as well. Jennifer Garrison was the majority leader in the House, majority floor leader, and certainly as a member of leadership then and now as a state representative, a three-term state representative for Marietta, is an important part of our caucus, adds to the diversity of our statewide and caucus representation. Now, running for statewide office is much different, as Kevin knows, as I've come to know it since I became chair in 2005, is much different than running for the state legislature or for a county-wide seat. You're under a great deal of scrutiny, not in terms of your opinions on policy issues. Quite frankly, it's quite the opposite. It's your commitment to fundraising, to traveling the state, to building the kind of resources, infrastructure that can take you forward into a general campaign season. And in the case of Representative Garrison, she recognized early on that it would be an uphill task, and unfortunately, she made a decision based on the amount of money and the amount of time that was not committed to step away. I say unfortunately because as a former candidate, when you, and Kevin knows this as well, when you invest 6 or 7 months of your life into this effort and then have to literally think about it a second time and then walk away from it, it has an impact not just on you personally, but your family, your friends. I'm very pleased that Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy, who is a Franklin County Clerk of Courts, former three-term city councilwoman in Franklin County, comes from the second largest county in the state, is the largest vote getter in Franklin County, including when you compare that to Barack Obama or Ted Strickland, is taking on this challenge. And it is a challenge running statewide, whether you're perceived to be the front runner or otherwise. Kevin, on his side of the aisle, has has two primaries that we're paying close attention to. Sandra O'Brien running against John Husted for Secretary of State, and a fellow who's recognized by most in this room, Tom Ganley, running for the United States Senate. And while we on the Democratic
let's
side,
throw it to Kevin for a second. Then on that, why don't you talk a little bit about having those primary battles?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Chris is on his 4th Secretary of State candidate, and it turns out that the latest one he has happened to spend a little time as the lobbyist for the AFL-CIO.
was she a social worker at any time?
No, she might have been. She might have been, and if she was, that's great. Admirable work. We're glad. We're glad.
Great now.
Yeah, great now. We have two primaries. Don't know whether Mr. Ganley will get in the race or not. There's still some conversations going on. Don't know.
Let me clarify. Let me stop you. That's a provocative nugget. Do you mean conversations meaning not?
No.
Try to get him out.
I've seen him run in TV. I've seen him run in TV ads. I've seen him at a few. I know he's traveled to a few events. I've heard he's gathered signatures. He's not filed them yet. He's not. As far as I know, he hasn't definitively said he's in and running. We'll see.
Kevin, do you think and this was my earlier joke about the protest, but what's behind that is clearly some restless conservatives. Tea Party isn't necessarily the right or most appropriate name, but those that don't find what they call the status quo Republicans happy. And what is that doing to your party? And that's clearly some element that Ganley is trying to tap into.
I think there's a whole new set of Ohioans and arguably Americans who are now energized and excited and are activated to participate in the electoral process. And as someone whose job it is to go out and convince them that the Republican Party and our candidates provide a better option and alternative and future for our state and for our country, that's great because it's a whole new set of voters. Look, I think there's a lot of folks around Ohio and around the country who are concerned about the future of our state and our country. They're concerned about skyrocketing taxes. They're concerned about skyrocketing deficits. They're concerned about the economy. And anybody, whether it's a conservative Republican, a first-time voter, someone who doesn't want to have a label, anybody who feels and is motivated and concerned about those issues, they'll find a home in the Republican Party.
Chris, what's your view of that movement going on, and how does that play into your politics?
Well, with all due respect, I think it speaks about the impatience the American electorate has regarding any number of issues. And in the case of those who seek to regain power, electorally speaking, those leaders tend to take advantage of that impatience and then try to funnel that emotion in such a way that those who, in this case in the Republican Party, can take advantage of the emotion that's out there can benefit on Election Day. The facts, if you were just to put the flat facts on the table and ask folks at a Tea Party event or those 30 or 40 people who are upset about the way the Republican Party responded in the Attorney General's office, and you ask them the question, do you think that if your child suffered a catastrophic health care incident that you should be protected by the government and you wouldn't lose your house having to pay for it? I think most of those people who attend those rallies would agree, yes, there should be a net to help those, the least among us. I think if you were to ask those people attending those events who supported and passed the largest tax increase in this state, not once but twice, they'd probably be surprised when they learned it was Kevin DeWine and his friends in the Republican caucus. If they were asked whether or not capping tuition rates at Ohio's public universities was important, they'd agree with Ted Strickland, who, as you've come to know, helped push through a freeze in the first 2 years and now has held the line in the third year on tuition rate increases across the state. I think that as we go towards the November election and there's fewer people in the back of the room shouting folks down in the front of the room, and we have a conversation based on the truth and facts that Democrats, independents, and like-minded Republicans will come to believe, if they've not already, that we're on the right track coming through this great recession, not of our making, not of our choosing, but the solutions certainly are, and Governor Strickland with his friend Senator Brown and so many others are on the right track.
Let me jump in for a second. Kevin, it sounded a little like Chris was almost reaching out to those conservatives and Tea Party members. Do you think they'd ever join that party? And if you want to address any of those points.
I don't. I have a funny feeling that people who are concerned and outraged about what's going on in Washington aren't likely to sign up with the Democratic Party and the party of Barack Obama and Chris Dodd and the likes in Washington and Ted Strickland. Not going to happen.